Now, I also wanted to follow up on North Korea's missile launch from this weekend. Following on the heels of North Korea's recent nuclear test, the latest launch represents yet another destabilizing and provocative action that only undermines peace and stability in the region. The United States remains fully committed to the security of our allies in the region, and we will take all necessary steps to defend ourselves and our allies and respond to North Korean provocations. To that end, and in response to the evolving threat posed by North Korea, the United States and the Republic of Korea have made an alliance decision to begin formal consultations regarding improvements to the alliance missile defense posture, specifically the viability of a terminal high-altitude area defense, or THAAD system, operated by U.S. Forces Korea. This alliance decision was recommended by General Curtis Scaparrotti, Combined Forces Command and U.S. Forces Korea Commander, and senior government officials of the Republic of Korea. The goal of the formal consultations is to bilaterally explore the feasibility of THAAD deploying to and operating on the Korean Peninsula at the earliest possible date. As General Scaparrotti said this weekend, THAAD would add an important capability in a layered and effective missile defense. The bilateral discussions that will occur underscore the ironclad commitment of the United States to defend the Republic of Korea. If the THAAD system were deployed to the Korean Peninsula, it would be focused solely on North Korea and contribute to a layered missile defense that would enhance the alliance's existing missile defense capabilities against potential North Korean missile threats. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Bob?
Peter, a question for you on the Korea announcement you mentioned. With regard to the consultations, it said that to be deployed, if it's deployed, to be deployed at the earliest possible date. Does Secretary Carter have any kind of timetable in mind? Is he talking about before the end of the year or before the end of the month? And are there any other kinds of military actions or preparations that are adjustments that are being contemplated or being made with regard to Korea?
Well, first of all, on the last part of your question there, you have to remember we are constantly assessing the security threat posed by North Korea in consultation with our South Korean allies. We have 28,500 troops on the Korean Peninsula right now. We will adjust and will continue to adjust, but this is one particular idea on the table right now, the THAAD system, that we're going to begin the consultations with the South Koreans over the deployment of this. And I think, Bob, without getting into a timeline, again, we'd like to see this move as quickly as possible, but we're beginning the consultations now in the coming days with the South Koreans, and we expect that this will move in an expeditious fashion.
There are no specific other adjustments or actions that are on the table, so to speak.
Well, again, Bob, we are constantly adjusting. We may not discuss publicly everything we're doing, but we feel confident that that we have assessed the North Korean threat in consultation with our allies in the region, not just South Korea, of course, Japan, others as well, and that we'll be able to respond accordingly. But we do feel at this particular moment, given the actions over the last few days, that the addition of the THAAD system would only enhance the protective measures that we already have in place. Those are details that will be worked out through the course of our consultations.
Peter, can you help us understand what capability that, if it was deployed, the THAAD system would provide? As a theater missile defense, would it, for instance, provide any protection for the United States, or would it be more for the allies in the region? What capability does it add that doesn't exist now?
Well, it's, again, Jamie, this would be part of a multi-layered missile defense that we have. And again, it would be designed to bolster our capabilities. I'm not going to discuss all of those capabilities up here, but we do think it would add another level of reassurance to our South Korean allies, to other allies in the region. And we think it would be an important step forward, as General Scaparrotti suggested, an extra layer of defense, an extra layer of insurance, if you will, to the missile defense system that we already have in place.
For instance, would this system, had it been in place, been capable of shooting down the long-range rocket that North Korea launched Sunday morning, Korea time?
Again, I'm not going to discuss capabilities of all those systems, but we feel confident that the addition of the THAAD system would bolster those defenses, and that we would have had the capability had that system posed a threat, for example, to the United States, that we would have been able to respond to that.
Okay, and one more thing. How do you assess, what's the assessment of whether or not this North Korean rocket or missile launch was a success. Was this a successful test of this technology?
It was successful in adding further destabilization to the region. It was another provocative action that does nothing to enhance stability on the Korean Peninsula. As to whether or not it achieved North Korea's goals, you can ask the North Koreans, but there's nothing about this test that surprises us. So in that sense, again, it's consistent with what we've seen previously from the North Koreans.
So the satellite did go into orbit then? That's the question. I mean, did they successfully get the satellite into orbit?
We've been able to determine that they were able to put a satellite or some space device into orbit. But again, characterizing how successful that was and how I'll leave that to the North Koreans. But there's nothing they did that comes as a surprise to us. Jim.
For years, the U.S. policy had been to prevent North Korea from getting a nuclear weapon and getting an intercontinental ballistic missile. It appears they got them both, right? I mean, still questions as to how effective their nuclear device is and how effective the ICBM or something, the equivalent of an ICBM would be. Now you're putting, or maybe putting, a missile defense system in. Has the U.S. defense strategy become accepting and dealing with a nuclearized North Korea?
Jim, we're in a situation now where we have at the UN Security Council not just the United States, but Russia and China condemning this action. Clearly, this is something that requires an international response as well. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to do what we need to do to protect the United States, to protect our allies. This country continues to pose a threat. Its actions over the weekend only enhance that position. So we're going to continue to do what we need to do to protect the United States, our citizens, and our allies at the same time.
You, of course, work for a defense secretary who years ago advocated for military action to destroy nuclear facilities on the ground in North Korea. I know he's since said he no longer holds that position. It's a different time. But are there military options still on the table to neutralize North Korean nuclear facilities on the ground? Are those still on the table?
Jim, I'll maintain what I've said before. Every day our forces along the border there are ready to fight tonight. We are ready every day to respond to the North Korea threat. I'm not going to get into every single aspect of our posture in North Korea, but we're satisfied that we have the capabilities right now to deter the North Korea threat. We're adding or proposing to add in consultation an alliance decision to enhance those capabilities right now in terms of a defensive measure, but we're confident that we have the capabilities necessary. Tony.
Speaking of capabilities necessary, the American people care less about THAAD than they do about the effectiveness of the ground-based defense system. It's had one success out of 3 attempts since 2008. What is the current level of confidence in the ground-based missile defense system with it at the senior levels of OSD in terms of attacking and destroying an ICBM launch from North Korea?
I'll just reiterate, Tony, that we feel confident we have the capabilities to deter the North Korea threat from posing a threat to the United States. And it's a multi-layered defense system, as I mentioned, and that's one aspect of our multi-layered defense. And again, we feel confident that we have the capability, the technology, the tools necessary to deter that threat.
Even if it's only had one successful intercept in 3 attempts since
I'll
2008.
repeat again, Tony, we believe we have the tools, the capabilities necessary to deter the North Korea threat.
Yeah, one
Jenny.
more about Korea. And on the official start consultation between U.S. and South Korea about the THAAD missile issues, do you have any detail about these issues?
My understanding, have they started? Is that your question?
Yes, THAAD missile.
Yes. My understanding is that the formal talks have not yet begun, but we do expect that they will begin in the next few days.
So between the United States and South Korea agreed talking about the THAAD missile issues?
Yes, that it's been an alliance decision to begin those consultations. A working group first would discuss again the specifics about any potential deployment. Yes,
Peter,
Paul.
the Chinese government, going back to the THAAD missile system, the Chinese government has expressed some concerns about any additional missile shield on the peninsula. Have they brought those concerns to the department, and are they going to come up during the ongoing negotiations with the South Koreans?
I'm not aware of any direct communication we've received from the Chinese here at the Department of Defense. I refer you to the State Department if they've had any consultations or any word from the Chinese. But again, this is a system that, as we point out, would be focused, a defensive system put in place to deal with the threat posed by North Korea, in addition to the layered missile defense that we already have in place. And so we don't believe that it should pose any sort of concern to the Chinese. Jamie.
Given that North Korea reacts badly to even the most innocuous U.S. military moves, just routine exercises, it often decries them as provocative and warlike. What would you anticipate their response will be to this potential deployment of that, and what would the response from the Pentagon be to what I think we can anticipate will be bellicose statements from Pyongyang about this deployment, which you have made clear is a defensive deployment?
Well, I just reiterate, this is a defensive system put in place because of North Korean actions. Most recently, the launch from over the weekend. And again, this is a response that we feel necessary to take because of North Korea's own actions. And if the North Koreans are concerned by this, they have an easy solution here, and that is to stop their own provocative actions. And again, they're in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Abiding by those resolutions would be an excellent place for North Korea to start. Yes?
Yeah, hi. In between, when a THAAD system might enter the peninsula, are you guys upping your BMD posture, or is there going to be more independent BMD patrollers coming out of 7th Fleet, more Aegis destroyers kind of out there? Is that something that you can talk about, like, as specifically as you can, or is there going to be an emphasis from some of these offshore kind of sea-based units to go and be able to take on this BMD mission? It sounds like there's
you make a good point that we have a multi-layered system in place. I'm not going to get into specifics, but just we feel confident that our posture right now is adequate to the challenge and the task. But we do think adding THAAD would simply only improve that posture and improve, if you will, the reassurance level for our allies in the region and for our own forces in the region as well. Yes.
Continuing on the North Koreans' capabilities, what is your current assessment of the range of their missile capabilities? Does it extend, for example, to the West Coast, or does it cover all of the continental U.S.?
I don't have right in front of me our latest technical assessment. Again, we're looking at a missile defense system that we feel is adequate to the challenge posed by North Korea today. And again, we judge our capabilities equal, certainly, to the task or the challenge posed by North Korea.
I'm sorry, is that assessment being reassessed based on this launch this weekend?
I'm sure we're going to be evaluating every aspect of the launch this weekend, factoring that into our own calculations, but there's nothing about this launch this weekend that comes as a surprise to the Department of Defense.
Quick follow on the missile. You said it was a successful launch. Just to be clear, did the U.S. observe anything new in this launch, greater, capability, stage, etc.? Or
I'm not aware of anything about this launch that is we've determined at this point is distinctly different from previous launches. I'll come back to Tara first. I'll come back over.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Another follow on North Korea. Given the sensitivities with the Chinese regarding a potential THAAD deployment, has there been any outreach to the Chinese? And how would this further
I must
complicate?
have been walking down the hallway when I got that question.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry if I missed it.
So I'll repeat it again, but I'm not aware of any communication we've had here at the Department of Defense with the Chinese. I'll leave you to check with the State Department if they've had any engagement. But the purpose of the THAAD system, again, is a defensive system. It would be specifically put into place to deal with the threat posed by North Korea alone. And we don't feel that any other country should have any concern about the deployment of this system given its defensive nature.
But is there any risk to, I guess, increasing tension when there's already an issue like the South China Sea?
There is a risk of increasing tension thanks to the actions of the North Koreans. And we believe that they have taken another provocative action here, which again, only destabilizes the situation further destabilizes the situation on the Korean Peninsula. And the Chinese have condemned their actions. We have condemned their actions. It is the North Koreans who are raising these tensions. And we are considering now, again, this move with our South Korean allies to enhance the defense, the security posture of South Korea, of our own forces that are in the region and our allies, other allies and partners in the region as well. Phil.
Just a quick follow-up on Tara's question on China. Could you explicitly say that the THAAD system will not be looking into China? I mean, why isn't it? Why shouldn't other countries be concerned about it? This system is highly capable.
It's going to be focused on the threat posed by North Korea.
Not into China at all?
This is an alliance decision that we're making with South Korea, and we're doing this in response to what the North Koreans have done, and that's how it should be viewed.